This week we'd like to feature X-Plane 12. X-Plane 12 is a gorgeous simulation for general aviation and more. You can tweak the X-Plane environment to practice specific skills and simulate conditions you'd encounter in a real cockpit. Play it back with new and experienced pilots alike. Love the way you can replay landings and more from any angle. There are infinite ways to practice detailed failures. You can test your reactions and the limits of your aircraft in failure simulation scenarios. You can browse over 500 plus failures to create the perfect training environment for you. Brush up on the classic fundamentals in the Cessna 172, or explore the new MCDU system in the Airbus A330. You can also experience a world of add-ons. Everything that comes with X-Plane makes it the most realistic, most robust flight sim experience you can ever have. X-Plane 12 puts you in the cockpit. Check them out today.
Forged in the crucible of fire in the hotbed of the Middle East, the IAF, Israeli Air Force, had become the cream of the crop of the air forces of the world, having tallied more victories than any other air force in the jet age. The Six-Day War in 1967, three Mirage 3s with a hammer down towards the Sinai Peninsula to intercept MiG-17s who were attacking Israeli ground troops. Jehoram demonstrates supreme mastery of his Mirage 3, avoiding MiG-17s and splashing MiG-17s in a fight over the Sinai Peninsula. He ends up with 4 MiG kills in 3 days, one from being that coveted ace designation for the Israeli Air Force. The next dogfight, it was with a crazy MiG-17 stick that was very good and was trying to get Rom into a turning fight. Using aerial tactics, high and lows, yo-yos, Rom finally is able to pull lead on this bird, squeezes the trigger, and down goes the Egyptian MiG-17, and Jehoram, at 21 years of age, becomes Israel's first jet ace, a milestone for a young Air Force that will be under constant threat from all directions, their pilots getting a trial by fire, and many graduating with honors. In 1966, there were 2 Mirage 3s on a course to the Jordanian border. They were met up with 2 more Mirages from the same wing. It was 4 Mirages eventually versus 8 Hawker Hunters, a very capable British aircraft. One of those 4 pilots, Squadron 119's element lead, Ron Ronan, was facing very skilled British-trained Jordanian pilots in British planes. They were dogfighting back and forth. No one could get a kill. They were even neck to neck. But Rom, a very determined and aggressive pilot, picked one Hawker out of the batch that he was going to kill for nothing else but the pride of his squadron and the IAF. He gets into a turning match with this said Hawker Hunter, and all of a sudden the Hawker Hunter bails out, dives down into a canyon, and now it's on a race through a canyon. A Hawker Hunter being hunted by a Mirage 3. They're back and forth in the canyon. Ronan cannot pull lead. He cannot get his reticle on the particular hunter because he had to be below it for his gun sight to be accurate. Finally, as they were going through the canyon, there was a hump in the middle of the canyon they were in, and the Jordanian lifts up over the hump. When he does, he goes into Ron's sights, and Ronan pulls the trigger and splash one Hawker Hunter, but with a horrifying twist. As the bird was going down, it turned sideways, facing the canyon top, facing the canyon wall, and the pilot ejects into the canyon wall at breakneck speed. I'm sure a very traumatizing event to watch. Well, he gets his kill. And Ron Ronan and his fellow pilots make history a half a year later in 1967 during the Six-Day War when they destroyed the air forces of 3 Arab nations in hours. That's right, hours. Mirage 3 solidified itself as an iconic aircraft due to the Israeli pilots being some of the best and most aggressive sticks in the world. And one of those pilots there that day in his first dogfight was a young novice Israeli pilot, an Israeli pilot whose destiny was to become the world's leading jet ace, the ace of aces, scoring more kills than anyone else in the world due to his skill and will to make a kill. June 16th, 1967, over southern Israel, 2 Israeli pilots are heading towards Egypt. Lieutenant Yuri Epstein is number 2 with only 3 combat missions under his belt. Though he has no kills, this will soon change, for he is destined to be the world's leading jet ace. Ronan and Epstein are joined by 2 more Mirages who claimed the area first because pilots in those days, especially those days, were like alpha predators. They were very territorial. But Ronan and Epstein stay in the area, soon getting in the mix with some Sukhoi Su-7s. Now, Yuri Epstein was a very naturally gifted pilot with excellent eyesight so great it was measured by radar. Though he did run across trials and tribulations to become a pilot. The first time he went out for pilot, he was denied because of a slight heart murmur. Well, he stayed at it. He had joined the paratroopers, but finally was accepted into the Air Force. His eyesight was so good, let me gauge it this way. The advantage in most dogfights was Epstein's due to his eyesight. Most pilots had eyesight from 8 to 12 miles. They could see very well. Well, Hawkeye, as he was called, Yuri Epstein, could see 24 miles, almost double a normal pilot. And this put him in the advantage in most every dogfight. Finally, Epstein has pulled lead on his Sukhoi, getting ready to squeeze the trigger, the adrenaline rushing through his veins, everything in slow motion. It seems to take forever. He finally squeezes the trigger, but nothing at all happens. He had accidentally hit the gun safety with his knee. He corrected the mistake, was able to pull lead again, and got his first kill as a pilot in this sortie. Now, it's 6 years later. Epstein pushes his skills to the limit. His Delta Wing versus another Delta Wing, and one of the top dogfights in the jet age. The Yom Kippur War of 1973, Epstein leads Ford Neschers, a Mirage 5 copy made by Israel due to some very clandestine operations by the Egyptians. By this time, Epstein is a double ace. He suddenly spots MiG-21s. They are going to engage. Epstein has to quickly react when he finally gets on a bogey or bandit, gets good missile tone, pulls the trigger, and dead missile. This is when he realizes that they were sucked into a trap. On this day, the hunters were being hunted, or it could say the hunters let themselves be drawn into a trap so they could hunt properly. Now, Epstein and his 3 other pilots in a 4-jet element are facing 10 pairs of MiG bandits. The Nesher, which Epstein is flying, gets its battle stats padded on this day as Epstein and his 4-wing element engage the 20 MiGs. Epstein's doctrine says he reaches what he calls situational awareness in a bowl, which is a circle of jets flying around dogfighting. He says you will notice one jet on maybe one of your men, you call it in. You may see another jet turning and you call it in for another pilot to get. You're always aware of what's going on inside the bowl, or as they said in World War I, the Luftberry. And Epstein also states that the true dogfights are always inside that bowl. Now, of all the many things you see in that bowl, you also have to keep your head on the swivel and watch your six. After just a few minutes of dogfighting, Epstein finds himself all alone because his 3 other pilots had to leave the battlefield and head for base. Now, Epstein was alone dogfighting 7 to 10 MiG. You could call this 1v10 the hard way. And Epstein considered them targets, not bandits. That would give you something as to the insight of his intellect, what he thought. Now, as we resume, it's the Yom Kippur War, and this is one of the most grueling dogfights of the jet age. It's Jura Epstein versus 11 MiGs. As he was watching the MiG-21, in which one pilot he was dogfighting with, he was on his tail trying to pull lead. This particular pilot was jinking, moving, doing everything he could. Well, they were only about 3,000 feet above the ground when this crazy pilot decided to pull a split S. Now, split S is rolling on your back and diving straight down and turning over and coming back up. Looks like an S. But it is needed to have, for the MiG-21, at least 6,000 to 6,500 to pull off said maneuver. This pilot was either supremely confident or supremely crazy. Now, Epstein watched this pilot pull this split S, thinking he'd hit the ground, when all of a sudden you just seen sand and dirt flying everywhere as this MiG has its nose pulled straight up and its ass almost on the ground with everything he has to get it back going up. Well, he had lost all momentum and all strength of gravity. And Epstein made him pay for his sins by splashing him right where he was hovering. Now, Epstein also states, in a bowl, the only pilot dangerous to you, or the only bandit dangerous to yourself inside the bowl, is the one on your six. You must always keep the bandit off of your six. That is one of the primary dogfighting rules. In a wartime scenario, which we're in now, Epstein was on the defensive, but takes advantage of any minuscule mistake. He finally catches one, gets a burst on it, and splashes one bandit. Now, there are still multiple bandits trying to get on him six, and he kept turning and going face up with them every time they made a rotation. He was finally starting to wear down the pilots. The next 2 move in to see if they can fare any better than the first. It's been 7 minutes since Epstein started this dogfight. The MiGs tried to get on his tail, but Epstein just keeps turning into them. All of a sudden, another MiG goes down, splash. The MiG lead runs like smoking oak, but Epstein had a missile. 1 missile left. He gets ready, has good tone, screws the trigger, and nothing. The missile just falls off. It was a dud. It would have been Epstein's 5th kill of the day. After splash number 4, it was best for him to go back to his air base, where he had called asking if there were more targets, and they said no, return to base. 10 minutes of extreme dogfighting against 11 MiGs can take its toll on anybody. But Epstein landed his MiG on a tarmac, come to a stop, and had to be helped getting out of his cockpit due to his leg. He had scored 3 kills on that day, finally getting back to base. Now, on down the timeline, at age 50, Epstein transitions into the F-16, which they designate the Hawk. Now, Epstein says the world's the limit as far as what you can do in an F-16. Its only problem is it is a fly-by-wire jet, and you do not have that feel that you have in a Mirage 3 or an Israeli-built Nesher that copies the M3. George Epstein, one of the greatest pilots in the history of aviation, demonstrated his skill during the wars of the 60s and 70s that Israel had to face. Israel to this day is still facing threats from all sides, but they keep chugging along and laying waste to any that threaten Israelis' sovereignty. I salute you, Epstein. A glorified career, a heck of a career, a long career for the mighty Israeli Air Force. The ace of aces with 17 confirmed jet kills. We at MAG salute you, sir. Until next time, this is Big Duke 6.